Good morning and welcome to our monthly webinar. Today's webinar is titled Active Play, Active Learning Project, Exploring Practical Strategies for Increasing Activity and Learning During the School Day. My name is Peter Cribb and I'm the National Director for the CATCH program with the Michael and Susan Dell Centre for Healthy Living at the University of Texas School of Public Health and the Austin Regional Campus. We're very excited about today's webinar, but before we get started, I'd just like to take care of a little housekeeping. First of all, our webinar today is being recorded and an archive will be made available on the catchusa.org website, along with the PDF of the presentation slides. During today's webinar, we encourage you to type in questions and comments via the questions box, which you can access through the control panel on your screen. You can type in your questions at any time, but to keep us on schedule, we'll try to hold off on answering them until the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. Next, I'd like to share a little bit about the Michael and Susan Dell Centre for Healthy Living. We are an international leader in conducting research and providing programs that promote healthy living for children, their families, and communities. Our work fosters improved health behaviours among youth, influences policy and environmental change to support healthy living, and advances professional education and community service. Our vision is healthy children in a healthy world. You can find out more about our centre on our website and school health at www.msdcentre.org. I'm now delighted to introduce our special guest for today's webinar, Dr. Andrew Springer and Ms. Pat Warner. Dr. Springer is an Assistant Professor of Health Promotion and Behavioural Sciences at the Michael and Susan Dell Centre for Healthy Living at the University of Texas School of Public Health, and with over 15 years of experience in design, implementation and evaluation of child and adolescent health promotion programs in Latin America and in the US. Dr. Springer currently serves as the Principal Investigator of the Active Play, Active Learning Project, a school and community-based initiative aimed at increasing children's physical activity via fun, practical, and low-cost strategies that can be easily incorporated into the school and out-of-school settings. In addition to his work with this project, Dr. Springer currently serves as a co-investigator of Activature, an NIH and Fogarty-funded study aimed at preventing tobacco use and promoting physical activity in secondary schools in Uruguay, and is a co-investigator on a bullying study in Cali, Colombia. In 2012, Dr. Springer received a Distinguished Award for Excellence in Service from the University of Texas School of Public Health. Welcome, Dr. Springer. Pat Warner. Ms. Warner has been in the field of education for over 20 years. Currently, Ms. Warner is the Health and Physical Education Curriculum Specialist for the Austin Independent School District in Austin, Texas, where she oversees the development of all curricula, resources, and teacher training K through 12. Ms. Warner's responsibilities with AISD also include working with coordinated school health programming and training new teachers for health and physical education. Ms. Warner created the AISD Health and Physical Education Institute, professional development training academy focusing in on instructional best practices. Ms. Warner is also a co-creator of the Active Play, Active Learning Project. Ms. Warner has presented at state and national level conventions and conferences, and she is also an adjunct professor in the Department of Health and Human Performance at Texas State University at the Round Rock Higher Education Center. Welcome, Pat. Thank you, Dr. Springer.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Peter, for the kind invitation to come speak with you today. So as Peter mentioned, my colleague Pat Warner and I will be speaking on the Active Play, Active Learning project. And this project really aims to explore practical strategies for incorporating more physical activity as well as active learning into the school day. Now, Peter, you may be wondering why I came to this session dressed in my tight spandex shorts and my wristband jazzercise headband. It's because Pat will be practicing a bit what we preach with incorporating a little activity break later in the session. But as you know, Peter, as one yourself who promotes active learning and activity breaks, that one doesn't need a jazzercise headband to incorporate active learning into the classroom. And we hope that our session will help inspire educators and other practitioners out there that activity and active learning is accessible for all. So for the purpose of our presentation, active learning refers to both learning an academic topic such as math or science in a physically active way, as well as incorporating physical activity throughout the school day to create an active learning environment. For our topics today, we will be providing a brief background on some of the benefits of active learning and school-based physical activity for children's health and academic achievement. We will then share some of our experiences working with the Active Play and Active Learning project, which is a project that was born here in Austin, Texas, and is now being implemented in other parts of Central Texas as well as Pueblo, Colorado. And then we will share some of our experiences from the field. Pat Warner, who's one of our health and PE curriculum specialists for Austin Independent School District, will share some of the work that they're doing at the district level to promote active learning. And then we will end with a few of our key lessons learned to date with promoting active learning in the elementary school setting. So I just want to start out with grounding us a little bit in the guidelines for physical activity in children. It is recommended that children and adolescents get at least 1 hour or more of physical activity every day, and that most of that hour should be in moderate or vigorous physical activity. Moderate activity one can think of as a brisk walk, whereas vigorous activity is more like a run. Recommendations also state that children should get vigorous intensity activity on 3 or more days during the week, and also muscle strengthening and bone strengthening activity as well. Recently, the Institute of Medicine released a report entitled Educating the Student Body, in which, among its recommendations, is that district and school administrators, teachers, and parents should create a whole-of-school approach to physical activity that fosters 60 minutes of moderate and vigorous physical activity per day. And of that 60 minutes, the aim is to at least get 30 or more minutes to be delivered to kids during the school day. Among the many different strategies mentioned in the IOM report is to provide that activity through recess, through dedicated classroom physical activity time, which is what we'll be talking about, as well as other opportunities. Well, there's a growing body of evidence to support the need and the importance of an active learning environment for children, beginning with the importance of physical activity. And I'm not going to go into all the benefits because we know that physical activity really is that magic pill for health. But beyond that, there's an emerging and growing body of research to show the benefits of physical activity for academic learning. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a report back in 2010, which was a review of over 50 studies, and they concluded that there is substantial evidence that physical activity can improve academic achievement. One of the ways that educators can incorporate physical activity is through activity breaks, and we'll be talking more about activity breaks, which we call brain breaks, in a little bit. Research has found that activity breaks, which are short 5 to 10 minute dynamics that can be done in the classroom setting, that they provide meaningful levels of physical activity, that they've been found to increase performance on standardized tests, and also research has found that they improve students' time on task and concentration. Of note, research has found that students with the most difficulty remaining on task may be those students who benefit the most from increased activity during the school day. Another body of research is showing the benefits of time spent outdoors. This body of research shows that kids who spend more time outside also engage in more physical activity. And among our own research, we found that just taking kids outdoors, kids are getting some moderate activity. There's also an emerging body of research showing the mental health benefits of exposing kids to the outdoors and to nature. And along the same lines of the importance of time spent outdoors, there's research showing the importance of recess for both physical activity, other social developmental benefits, as well as classroom behavior and time on task. Research has shown that kids who get more research have better classroom behavior as well as better time on task. There's also a strong theoretical foundation for promoting an active learning approach in schools. I'm sure many of the educators out there are familiar with the theory of multiple intelligences, which posits that students and people in general have different types of intelligences, such as kinesthetic, auditory, and visual, and that with this, there's multiple learning styles. Now, there's some debate within the literature about whether we really learn differently, whether Peter or Pat here learns differently than I do. But what there is research to show is that people learn better when exposed to a topic via multiple methods. And that's one of our foci with our projects, is to not only promote more physical activity, but to promote better learning approaches through teaching in a different way using activity. And lastly, an important theoretical foundation comes from ecological models of health behavior. Now, one approach is we could just educate kids to be more active, but actually what research is showing is the importance of engineering physical activity into child settings. The popular aphorism, "You are a product of your environment," holds very true. And we know that we shape kids' activity through the school day, through the activities we provide. Through our project, what we're trying to do is really harness the school setting and those multiple environments within the school setting, such as policy, social information, and built environment, to enhance children's physical activity engagement. Well, the Active Learning Project aims to promote active play and active learning via low-cost, fun, and practical strategies. We've identified several guiding principles to help guide our work in this area. The first, and among the most important, is the concept of co-learning with teachers, students, aftercare providers. We're also now starting to work in the aftercare setting, as well as other community leaders. Secondly, to provide strategies for freer materials at cost. Really, we're all about how we can activate schools to promote more physical activity and active learning. Also, the importance of local decision-making and action. We find that our project really benefits when we have input from those on the front line who are actually implementing activity. The importance of partnerships, and I'll share some of our key partnerships that we've developed over the years. Also, a student-centered approach. One of the philosophies that helped inspire us is how we can create processes where students can really take the lead with their own activity. And lastly, this idea of activating activity. So we understand that we're just one of many efforts out there to promote physical activity in schools, and we want to be a part of that network, and we welcome you to be part of our co-learning network around active learning. So 3 key strategies that we've been promoting with active play and active learning are: 1, a peer-led games process, which is about a 10 to 20 minute structured activity time. The aims here are to increase moderate to vigorous physical activity either during recess or a structured activity time. Also, to promote social competencies and leadership of kids. Second strategy are classroom brain breaks, and my colleague Pat here will be talking more about those in a minute. And among our aims are to promote active classroom transitions, as well as to reinforce academic topics in an active way. And our third strategy is to promote playground markings enhancements. And here our goal is to promote activity both during recess, as well as to reinforce academic topics in an active way during class time. We've had several stages or phases so far of development with active play and active learning. We began back in 2009 under a pilot project with funding from the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. in which we started with the aim of providing a tool to teachers to help engage their kids in physical activity. In Texas, we have a mandate that kids get 135 minutes of activity a week. Unfortunately, in some places like Austin, other parts of Texas, as well as other parts of the US, kids only get PE on 1 or 2 days a week. As such, classroom teachers are being charged with providing that other activity time. So our first goal is, how do we provide some easy-to-use strategies for teachers to engage their kids in activity? In phase 2, we conducted a replication study. We were invited by the Colorado Health Foundation to partner with them and with the Pueblo City County Health Department on promoting our work in schools in Pueblo, and I'll share some of our research on that note. Phase 3, we worked more with our playground marketing strategies in school districts surrounding Austin and Del Valle and Bastrop. And in phase 4 right now, we're working more on learning about dissemination and institutionalization of our efforts, both in Del Valle and Bastrop, Texas, as well as in Pueblo, Colorado. So let me begin by sharing some of our work with our peer-led games process. So this strategy stems from work under the sport education model, which promotes providing roles for kids to own their game and PE time experience. With this, we'll work with a class of about 20 students, and within that class, we'll divide the students into teams. Many classrooms already have their teams established for other group work that they do. And with that, we've created leadership roles. We use this hanging folder system, which you can see displayed on your screen, both as a cue to action as well as an organizing structure for the games process. So within these leadership roles, we have a role for a captain, assistant captain, the timekeeper, and equipment managers. Now, with this, we want to emphasize that we're not here promoting competition per se, but rather promoting the ownership of this game's time by the students. And one of the key aspects is we've engineered in high activity, fun, tag type games, a lot of which come from the Catch curriculum. And lastly, we provide process and guidelines for both teachers and students to ensure safety and safe play. With our initial pilot study, we assessed whether kids were actually getting more activity during our peer-led games process. And here is a bar graph of the percentage of time third graders engaged in vigorous physical activity. We had 8 schools, 4 of which were assigned to the peer-led condition, and 4 were our usual and customary teacher-led condition. As you can see, those who are in the peer-led condition got almost twice as much vigorous physical activity compared to those in the teacher-led condition. We also used an alternating treatment conditions design to assess the same group of students from the peer-led condition under the recess condition. As you can see, in recess, they got about 15% of their time in vigorous physical activity compared to almost 30% in the peer-led condition. So this gave us some confidence that we are able to move the needle a bit on the vigorous physical activity with this fairly straightforward peer-led games process. We also assessed the satisfaction of students and teachers for implementing the peer-led games process, and we found with students overall a high level of satisfaction. They reported that it was easy to implement. A high majority expressed desire to play again the peer-led games process for the coming year as well as outside of school. And of importance, we found no gender differences in the ratings. We also found high satisfaction from teachers, and we got a lot of good feedback from our teachers who implemented the process. Some of the quotes, the peer-led games process gave organization and structure in a fun way. We found that teachers felt students were capable of leading the games, that students are given the opportunity to learn about leadership responsibility. And we also had some very constructive feedback, such as the need for enhancing our teaching of students about the rules of the game, greater clarity of the role of the teacher, which we've taken into consideration and have fine-tuned. And we've also found that the PE teacher is a valuable asset in helping to teach the games. a really common theme that we were pleasantly surprised to hear about was that teachers said that picking my most difficult behavior problems as the captains really worked. I was shocked. And this is what we found, was that teachers often know their students in the classroom setting, but not always out in the activity setting. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Pat.
Thank you, Andrew. I would like to refocus a little bit on that peer-led process for just a second. One of the things that Andrew was just talking about, that the teachers picking students who were behavior challenges in their classroom as captains during the activity time really was something that was very significant. I know that teachers going in were worried about behavior problems in that aspect, and they realized that the behavior problems became non-existent in this due to the leadership support that we put the students in. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about our second strategy, and that is classroom brain breaks. Brain break is a term that's been used quite frequently these days in learning altogether, in education altogether, especially in our world of physical education. So what we're talking about here is, from brain breaks definition-wise, is any break from cognitive activity. It gives your brain an opportunity to focus on something different, or to focus on the same thing possibly in a different way. So we're truly talking about giving a break for your brain. So as Andrea stated, active students learn better. We know that. We've seen lots of research to support that fact. So knowing that physical activity increases attention span and student focus, it makes sense to incorporate movement into your daily routine. One way to be able to do that is to plan for those daily activities. You can begin your day with a brain break. Begin an activity before you take a test or anything else using a brain break of some sort. You can build brain breaks into any transition time that you have during the day, moving from one subject area to another, moving from one location to another. Waiting in line no longer becomes wasted time, wasted space. That's a perfect opportunity to give kids a challenge, give them something that they can do physically and cognitively, so that there's no wasted learning time. We know that time is at essence during the school day, that we all have lots of things that need to be done during the school day. So it's important that we use every moment of every time that we have to be teachable moments during the day. So whatever you do, wherever you are, the important thing is that brain breaks should be used throughout the day, every day. One of the biggest benefits when we talk about training teachers is when a teacher possibly needs a break. That happens to the best of us. If you get to a point during the day where you feel like you're being lethargic, chances are your children have already lost interest in what's going on in that day. It's time for everybody to get up, move, focus on something different as a brain break, get a little bit physically active, get blood moving through your body again, and supporting your brain cognitive research pieces that go on in your brains. Okay, sorry, Andrea, I'm just not the research person. So if we go to the next piece here, one of the biggest questions that we get, Andrea and I both, when we do all of our trainings is that, okay, I agree the fact that students learn better when they're active, but how in the world am I supposed to do this in my classroom and still maintain the control that I need to teach the things that I need to teach? First steps, you just got to plan. Planning, what will you do? How are you going to do it? What space are you going to need? What equipment might you need? What we have done is put together brain breaks that take little or absolutely no equipment, so that you don't have to worry about pulling things together to get ready to do them. As with any teaching, you want to set clear expectations for your students. We talk about setting expectations as far as behavior is concerned, organizing groups, making sure that students and teachers alike can visualize exactly what the movement piece, what that brain break is going to look like, so that there's no surprises along the way. The biggest keys to success for students in a moving environment is making sure that you have a clear start and stop signal. You can incorporate your current start and stop signals, but we encourage all teachers to have more than one stop signal. If students are actively engaged, they're moving around, talking, laughing during a brain break, they may not see you raise your hand to get their attention. You might need to pair that with an echo clap, such as an echo back would give you the attention that you need. You can refocus your students again, move forward to the next activity. When we train our teachers in active play, active learning, we also practice what checking for understanding looks like. Instead of just asking, does everybody understand? to which you're possibly going to get a lot of blank stares and nods because students just want to get busy doing whatever it is you have ready for them to do. We ask the teachers to choose students to give the steps of whatever that activity is. It sounds like, Peter, what will you do if you get tagged? To which Peter must answer correctly, and you support that. Andrew, what should your feet be doing during this activity? This holds all students accountable for the instruction and allows those students who might possibly have missed the original instruction to get a review from their peers, because we know that students really listen to their peers, sometimes even better than they listen to the teacher. So what we want to do is give an example, a small example of a brain break. So I'm going to ask everybody, wherever you are right now, to just stand up. You're going to hold your hands out directly in front of you, right waist level. With your right hand, you're going to give a thumbs up signal, and for all of you Aggies out there, that would be gig 'em. For on your left hand, you need to put out your pinky finger. So now you have pinky out with left hand, thumbs up with your right hand. What I'd like you to do is just switch what each one of those hands is doing. Thumb goes down, pinky goes out, thumb goes up, pinky comes in. All right, so that took a little bit of thought because I'm doing this along with you. Now switch back quickly. Switch back again. And the sound you hear is Peter giggling because this is not being successful. Go ahead and have a seat. I've put the link to that brain break right there on your screen, so you'll have access to that later as a video. But what you see, what we've done here is just changing what we're thinking about. We've stopped our brain from thinking about, okay, we've listening to brain breaks, we're listening to research, and now you've actually done something, so that's given your brain a chance to rest, giving your brain a chance to have that break that we're talking about during the classroom. No equipment was necessary. If you in your classroom want to make that more active, all you have to do is just have students march in place and do the exact same thing. You want to increase the activity a little bit more from that? All you have to do is have your students march around the room as they're doing that activity. As you can see, something very simple, something very easy, very little equipment, but that gives you the brain break that we're talking about, just a small example. Andrew?
Thank you, Pat. So a second key strategy that we're promoting is the use of playground markings. And again, back to this idea that one way to get kids active is to teach them to be active, but that research really shows another way is that we can just modify their environments and kids will be more active. I became intrigued with playground markings when I read some research out of the UK that found that just modifying the play area with playground markings, kids will play more during recess. So there's now several studies that have documented this, and we tested this as well here in Austin and also found that kids during recess played more when their playgrounds were modified with playground markings. What we're finding now is that playground markings are not only useful to get kids active during recess, but also as an alternate teaching outdoor classroom. And Pat's going to share with us some more of our work with our playground markings.
What you see here is an example, and you're going to see for the next few slides some examples from our original pilot program in Austin ISD. You see a simple locomotor foot pattern. What you do see here is that in language, both English and Spanish, in Austin ISD, we do have a dual language program at a majority of our schools, and so that was important to the principals at that school that we used both languages. So you see a spool of thread there, and as we go to the next slide, you'll see that the students had the opportunity while walking on the sidewalk going out to recess to sew their way in and out and around the poles leading from the building to the playground going towards recess. The next slide that you see, we see another set of locomotor skills placed on sidewalks. These are placed on sidewalks leading from building to building, all around the buildings in Austin ISD, and even out to the playground. We have hop and mosey, because it wouldn't be Texas if we didn't show that we can mosey along down the sidewalk with our cowboy boots. So instead of always walking in a straight line to get from one location to another, we're trying to invite creativity and imagination in our students and give them the opportunity to play their way from one location to another. We also use playground markings as that outdoor classroom that Andrew's talked about. This is an example of a multiplication chart. This is one of our schools in Austin. We had a great teacher who used this religiously anytime that she had a math lesson. She'd take her students outside, and instead of having kids sitting at their desk practicing math facts or practicing just using flashcards with each other, they would go out and actually interact on the multiplication chart using their bodies. So one would start at one number, one would start at the other one, they'd meet in the middle, obviously, then you'd have the answer. At some of our more recent active play, active learning locations, the schools chose to leave the numbers out of the multiplication chart so that the older students could actually use chalk and fill that in themselves. That gives them that extra practice to be able to interact with that marking. Another example of a math playground marking is the ruler, so that kids could go outside and use measurement, walk the ruler, use things to measure next to the ruler. Gives them a great example of being able to see a measurement in action. We also have a couple of different kinds of maps. At first thought, we figured the maps would be a really great way for us to reinforce geography, states, capitals, major cities, rivers, mountain ranges, all the things that you normally think of when you're talking about geography. But what we came to see is once the students and teachers began to use these markings, they became very creative in how they used them and what they did. They used them for directions, math skills, even colors with the younger kids, kindergarten and on up, practice coloring. The kids could run to that color of state, and then they'd actually name that state and possibly the capitals as well. We have a world map. This is a great picture of that motley painting crew that we had out at our original playground markings. I think I personally changed the boundaries of several East Asia countries during the process of painting this map, but thankfully we had some great UT graduate students who were able to correct that mistake. But you see the world map can be used in a variety of ways. In science, we have examples of the tornado cycle, butterfly life cycle. That tornado was built or painted, excuse me, at one of the schools where that naturally a whirlwind occurred there with dust. And so when they painted around that, the kids could talk about what a tornado looks like and actually see that happen based on the wind patterns at that school. Next slide that we have looks at the solar system. Right next to this, we had also a yoga series. The sun salutation, I believe, was painted at this school as well. You'll see that each school chose what they wanted to have on their sidewalks and place labs. And because of the popularity of this original project, we were very lucky in AISD to get other funding after that, and we actually have playground markings at all 83 of our elementary campuses. So Andrew, you want to talk about a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. So I mentioned earlier that we were fortunate to be invited to partner with folks out in Pueblo, Colorado. And with that, we were able to do some accelerometer assessment to see if kids were actually getting more benefit from these various strategies. And we found a significant increase in the amount of minutes that they engage in moderate to vigorous physical activity. So we had about a third increase in moderate to vigorous physical activity. And we feel that we can continue to improve as we learn more about how to implement and institutionalize these activities into the school day.
I'm very lucky in Austin ISD that we really focus on whole child, every child. All of our strategies from our district and all the principles that we focus on in our district really talk about educating the whole child. In our health and PE department, we put our attention and our energy in supporting all the teachers throughout our district for active learning. In our district, at the elementary level, we have something called WOW, Working Out for Wellness Time. Elementary students are required in Texas to have 135 minutes a week of physical activity. Not all of that can be met in our physical education classes, so we put that back to the classroom teachers to help support and make sure that we get our students get those minutes. And so we, as a department, really focus on supporting teachers with tools that they could use during that time, and we use a lot of our active play, active learning strategies. We encourage brain breaks throughout the day. In our website, we have our physical education and health education website. We really have a massive amount of information to support brain breaks and other activities, active learning activities for our teachers, and those can be found on the Austin ISD website. If you go under quick links, there's a curriculum navigation page that supports health and PE, and you'll find those there. We are upgrading that this summer to make it a little less overwhelming for our teachers. Our Office of Academics really supports active learning, and throughout what we do, what we have is a curriculum writers cadre we call CWC, and the summertime where master teachers throughout our district get together to write exemplar lessons for their colleagues to help really support with the curriculum pieces. Our curriculum specialists at my level in the district office really help to guideline the outline and the focus and the framework for the curriculum, but the teachers themselves write those lessons. And during that time, we provide professional development for those teachers to really show them how to incorporate active learning during the school day. We teach them how to do brain breaks. We show them places where they can do brain breaks. And then we actually go in and talk to them based on their content area to help support them to be able to write those lessons, write the different pieces, the active learning pieces into the lessons that then teachers could use the next school year. So Andrew's going to talk to you a little bit about lessons learned from our project experience.
Good. So yes, in closing, I'll just summarize a few of our key lessons learned with promoting active learning. And I'll just underscore again, we continue to learn about this area and invite folks to co-learn along with us. First is the idea of identifying an active learning champion at the grade level or at least at the school who can be really a resource for that school around this topic of active learning. We've also found that involving teachers, the PE, art, classroom teachers, the principal, PTA, and students in this effort really helps create more ownership. With our work with playground markings, we start by forming a design team who can help figure out what markings they want for their school. And we found that this, the cross between our PE folks and our art teachers can really help promote that idea of a coordinated school health approach. We also found, just anecdotally speaking, that painting the playgrounds is a great way to build social cohesion within schools. We worked with several schools that didn't have much parent involvement at the beginning, and through this effort, really took on and grew their parent-teacher association. We also found that rolling out active learning strategies at different stages may be a best practice. We've tried to do this all at once, and we found that it works better when you start out perhaps with brain breaks or activity breaks, and then incorporating the other strategies as the school year goes on. Training. To state the obvious, we find that teachers do better with training, and our approach has been a train-the-trainer approach, where our real goal is to create leadership and empower schools to take on their active learning, to not become dependent necessarily on outside groups to do this. And in doing so, we found that there's not just one cookie-cutter approach, that schools are different, and we need to be able to adapt our approaches to fit within that school setting. With faculty meetings, that's another best practice, and we really encourage our school champions to promote activity breaks at faculty meetings, both to model what we're doing and also to encourage and inspire other teachers to do so as well. And this can also be done at the grade level meeting, where we promote that teachers share, when they're doing their curriculum planning, a activity break or brain break they can do with their students. We've also had some experience with active learning promotion. So one that we've promoted is this idea of a raffle, where we've had students and teachers write down the brain breaks that they've done and enter into a raffle to be able to win, for example, jump ropes for a school. And this is a way we see as kind of catalyzing a school having a kickoff week or 2 weeks in which we really emphasize brain breaks. And lastly, we've been learning more about how we might institutionalize active learning, and one of those ways, which Pat mentioned with their work with Austin, is aligning our work with learning objectives. For Texas, that would be with the TEACS objectives, and we've done this also with Colorado learning objectives. lastly, just our last lesson learned is the importance of partnerships, and we've had several great partners over these past couple of years. In addition to our work, the School Public Health in Austin, as well as Austin Independent School District, we've worked with artists here in the community, both in Austin as well as Pueblo, also other PR folks to help get the word out. We've also worked with nonprofit groups. With one of our projects here, we had a nonprofit arts group take on the lead, and they got students to be at the helm of helping design and paint the playground markings. In Colorado, I believe we mentioned that we're partnering with the Pueblo City County Health Department, who is in turn partnering with school districts. That effort's being led by our colleagues Miranda Stovall and Sarah Mays, and also in Del Valley and other school districts. And lastly, just to mention our funders, Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, Colorado Health Foundation, and St. David's Foundation, for whom we're very grateful for their generous support of this effort. So great, well thank you very much. And again, we mentioned we know we're one of many groups looking at this initiative, and we look forward to growing and learning with the rest of you educators and health promotion practitioners out there about how we can really activate and catalyze schools to be active learning schools.
Great, thanks Andrew and Pat. That's very exciting stuff, and seeing the data that you've been able to gather, not only the activity levels but the number of minutes that kids are being involved is huge. This is a good time if you have questions to log on, and then we can answer them. We've got one already, and then I've got a couple. I usually always do. And one just came in. Do you have any policy samples that support physical activity? And either Pat or Andrew.
Sure, well, that's a great question. I'm glad you bring that up, because in our work, what we see as a policy can really help support the behavior as well. So we have had work. I've worked here with Pat and other folks with Austin on developing recess policies, and we'd be happy to share that with folks. We have a template that we can share. And I will mention that I think there's more work we can do in terms of creating policies around sitting time. I understand that El Paso Independent School District has a policy that students can only be sitting for a certain number of minutes during the day, which can really help support an activity break or brain break approach. So that's something I think that deserves more attention for the rest of us to explore.
So what about incorporating some of these ideas into daycare centers? Andrew?
Yes, well, that's a great question. And in fact, we started this past year partnering with a group called Foundation Communities, which provides after-school programming. I've had a couple of my graduate students help develop both a study and training to promote our peer-led games process in those settings. And there's great potential to do more in those settings with these strategies as well. And as many of you may know, there's been a lot of work in schools, but so much more work we can do outside the school setting to provide more activity for kids.
We've really focused, I mean, most of the daycare centers, those kinds of things, are really looking for a way to get their kids more active, and so we've tried to work really hard and be cognizant. Andrew's really good about paying attention to what's going on and really developing those relationships for us to be able to go out and then help support the teachers that are in charge of those kiddos.
Great. And actually, we just had a comment coming in appreciating the presentation and ideas, and this one's relating back to taking those activity breaks and brain breaks and making them more academic, looking back to in physical education, bones and muscles, and academics, multiplication, language arts, and so on. I know there's quite a range of activities.
We've done in Austin ISD originally about 5 years ago, we looked in our district at those pieces of curriculum where students were really challenged on, and supervisors worked with the other departments, the other academic departments, and had them bring to the table, what are your kids really missing? What are they really having trouble with? And then my writing team, I have an amazing group of elementary school writers, came together and really wrote and created games focusing on those academic concepts. And there's a lot of that out there. So that's been happening. It's easy to take one game and then put it into lots of different content areas, and so we really enjoyed working with teachers to really explore that. And teachers are really good resources for that. Once you get them started and get the idea and plant the idea in their head, then they can run with it from there.
And I'll just chime in too. I really appreciate that comment. And one thing we've been trying to promote, through my public health researcher lens, we're sometimes I think narrowly focused on how we get kids to be more active. But what we're seeing with our work is that there's real potential for not just enhancing, of course, physical activity, but also learning as well. And just to reiterate what Pat said, teachers are our best resource. They're helping us be more creative. They know what they need to teach. We have one school at the intermediate school level that's creating plot line playground marking to teach kids about the different elements of a story as well in an active way. So a lot more I think we can learn around how we not only promote activity, but how are we promoting better learning through activity.
And one of the other things, and I think Andrew mentioned it early on, is during the promotion part of the last couple of phases of active play, active learning, we've really challenged the kids themselves. Here's a playground marking, so what would you do with this? How would you interact with this? And they have created some amazing games, both just for activity but also academic focus. So it was pretty exciting to see what kids can come up with as well.
Yeah, I must admit, when I saw that map, the geography map, a lot of people have no idea where Australia is, somewhere over there next to Switzerland or something, So I'm sure that's, so I think it's going to be very helpful down the line for sure. Now, teachers, all right, they might not feel comfortable getting up, taking the kids outside. What do you say to teachers to get them to take the kids outside or consider doing that?
Well, some of the roadblocks that teachers sort of present us with is that's really going to take a lot of time for me to get outside and get my kids outside to interact with, say, a playground marking. But what we've discovered is that transition time, just getting out there, increases the activity level. But if you give kids a little something to do on the way out there, for example, count the steps it takes us to get out to the United States map, and then use that number once you get out there, then you haven't lost learning time. Every single moment is a learning opportunity, even just getting outside to a playground marking.
Absolutely. We're running out of time. Here's a very good question that's come in. Some folks having trouble getting their kids engaged. Any tips for those teachers?
I am a physical education teacher by trade. I have always found that students have no problem getting engaged when the person selling the product is also engaged. So it just takes some enthusiasm, it takes some excitement, it takes that you believe in what you're doing, and selling that to kids. Kids want to have fun. And everything we do in our profession should be fun. I'm going, I shouldn't at people, Peter. I know we don't like that. But it should be fun, everything that you do. And you don't have to, just because it's something that's curricular mandated, something that's state mandated by a law, doesn't mean that that's a drudgery. Getting outside, being outside, moving our bodies is something exciting, and we need to sell that to our kids again. I think we have lost that a little bit. We've lost the fun. And we've lost the excitement of what we're all about as far as getting kids up and moving.
So it's true, that motto, is it? If it's not fun, it's probably not going to get done.
Absolutely.
All right, there's been a couple more questions, and we'll answer them via email. So sorry we've run out of time for that right now. But Pat and Andrew, thanks so much for sharing the project, the outcomes, your findings, what you're learning. It sounds all doable to me.
Absolutely.
And thanks for your commitment for creating, and supporting a healthy environment in the schools, one we know that does change children's behavior.
Peter, thank you for the invitation to be here today, and we just encourage the rest of you out there to help us build this culture of active learning.
Thank you very much.
Until next month, bye now.